This is the tragedy of Marissa Marcel. Born in France, Marissa moved to London as a teenager to work as a model. An early soap commercial caught the eye of a Hollywood casting director, and Marcel was cast as Matilda, the lead antagonist in Arthur Fischer's 1968 film Ambrosio, a story of love, lust, and man's inability to resist the temptation of women. Although the film was never released, Marcel followed up Ambrosio with the broody thriller Minsky in 1970, in collaboration with debut director John Durick, who worked as Director of Photography on Ambrosio. Once again assuming the role of the femme fatale, Marcel played Franny, lead suspect in the murder of the great artist Minsky. Her captivating aura and bold sexuality are enough to derail the case as Detective Goodman falls for her. The movie was, sadly, never finished, as an accident on set led to actor Carl Greenwood's untimely death. Marissa Marcel seemingly disappeared after Minsky, yet nearly 30 years later she burst back onto the scene in 1999's Two of Everything, a tale of dark duality where a pop superstar and her body double have their lives inextricably tied, with Marcel playing both the lead roles. This film, too, never made it to the silver screen, and Marissa Marcel was never heard from again. But the story goes much deeper. Immortality is a video game in only the vaguest sense. It asks the player to explore archived footage of all three of Marcel's films. While the final cuts showcase Marissa's undoubted talent in front of camera, there is much more behind the scenes that hints at the truth of what happened to Marissa Marcel, a truth that is tragic, dangerous, and fascinating. A truth that is extremely hard to uncover as well. Perhaps impossible, for after scouring Immortality's footage, I am still not fully convinced I know what happened to Marissa, and if you found this video, you may well feel the same. Immortality holds much meta-commentary on the dark side of Hollywood, the objectification of women and the struggles of the artist, and in doing so, it provides incredibly few concrete answers, particularly if you rewind clips.
So, you've been around for a while, and you look good for it.
Well, I changed with the times.
But to say any more would be to spoil things, so this is the obligatory spoiler warning before we go any further. So make sure you definitely don't want to give Immortality one more chance at understanding its story, because there is no going back from this point. There's no rush, take your time, really have a think, and while you're thinking, maybe drop a like on this video, because while this story was a joy to unravel and understand, it did take an insane amount of time and research to do so. So any support you can show this video or the channel would be hugely appreciated. My channel covers video game stories and the decisions development teams take to tell those stories, so if that's your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. Immortality is certainly one of the most unique and interesting and gripping game narratives I've come across, so let's talk about why. Ambrosio, played by Robert Jones, is the Lord's most faithful servant. Head of a convent in Catholic Madrid, he teaches the word of God to all those willing to listen. But complications arise when young Rosario, played by Marissa Marcel, reveals they are not the loyal servant they claimed to be. Rosario is actually Matilda, who idolized Ambrosio's sermons and fell in love with him. She concealed her sex to join the convent and be closer to him, and now confesses her true intentions. Ambrosio's virtuous commitment to God makes him initially reject Matilda's love, but in time, his resolve fails. With Matilda on the brink of death, the two ultimately fall to temptation. As temptation breeds more sin, Ambrosio's regret grows tenfold. Fraught with the newfound hypocrisy in his sermons, he seeks redemption from Antonia, played by Sofia Morgana, the beautiful virgin who just arrived in Madrid. Antonia's mother is weak from sickness and she seeks help from Ambrosio. As the two spend time together, Ambrosio falls in love, much to the dismay of Matilda, but despite her heartbreak, she still wishes to help Ambrosio, if this is what he truly desires. Matilda explains away that Ambrosio and Antonia can be together, free from the church's judgment, providing he agrees to an act against God. They fake Antonia's death, and Ambrosio pretends to lay her body to rest in a crypt. Ambrosio intends to wait until Antonia wakes, but cannot resist his carnal desires. She tries to escape, but Ambrosio stops her, knowing that if she returns to the outside world, his life is ruined. He stabs her in the struggle, but Antonia still escapes, returning to the chapel before collapsing to the floor. Ambrosio and Matilda stand trial, and both are found guilty of sorcery and sacrilege.
Sorcery!
They are sentenced to death. Fearful of losing his life, Ambrosio makes a deal with the devil in his cell, agreeing to renounce his loyalty to God if Lucifer can free him from his fate. The devil agrees, and Ambrosio is thrown through space and time and lands in the desert. It is here Lucifer reveals he was behind it all. He took the form of Matilda to seduce Ambrosio, to prove he could break even the most devout of God's followers. Matilda was merely the devil in disguise, using her looks to ignite Ambrosio's libido and break his vows. With his soul signed over to the devil, Ambrosio repents for his sins forever in hell.
And cut!
Detective Goodman, played by Carl Greenwood, has worked in homicide for years but has never seen anything like his latest case. Renowned artist Minsky, played by John Durick, is found dead on the floor of his studio, suffocated and castrated. His cause of death is as sexual as it is morbid, which leads Goodman to eye Minsky's longtime partner, Franny, played by Marissa Marcel, as a lead suspect. Goodman meets Franny at one of Minsky's exhibitions, getting the immediate impression she's letting on more than she knows, and takes her to the station for questioning. Franny is more interested in toying with the detective than giving information, but does agree to help out with the case, if that's what Goodman wants. His determination to find Minsky's killer inevitably means spending more time with Franny, her advances becoming more and more explicit. But she does give him a lead, Frankie Santora, who might be able to provide him with more information. Entering Frankie's apartment only brings up more questions. As it turns out, the name was merely an alias of Franny. There's an intense scuffle, with Franny having the opportunity to kill Goodman, but she refrains. Instead, she confides in him the chaotic relationship she and Minsky shared. In an effort to better understand Minsky, Goodman agrees to model for some of her more adventurous art pieces. Franny creates a sculpture of his face, and while the clay dries, Goodman tentatively cedes to Franny's advances. She does not hesitate, tying Goodman up and stopping his intake of breath as the two get intimate, shall we say. There are a lot of scenes I can't show here because YouTube will demonetize me with all the fury of a woman scorned, but it's all shockingly similar to the likely cause of Minsky's death. Goodman, however, does not share the same fate. Cutting him free, Franny leads Goodman to the bedroom for more of the same, use your imagination, and in the aftermath, Franny shows Goodman letters from Minsky's previous muse, Olga.
I saw her at the gallery.
Goodman recognizes her from the exhibition, and suddenly, a new suspect enters the fray. Goodman gets word from some of Franny's friends that Olga was spotted frequenting Club 88, so he goes there with Franny to scope it out. By chance, they find Olga while they're otherwise occupied. I've had to crop so many of these clips, and they give chase. Olga escapes, but the two track her down at her apartment and arrest her. Returning to Goodman's apartment, Franny realizes he not only possesses an original Minsky painting, but it's a painting of her. Outraged, she believes Goodman sees her only as a means to an end, despite their romantic entanglement. With emotions high, she admits to killing Minsky.
I'm the one who killed Minsky.
The scene flashes back to the night before Minsky's death, showing how he and Franny would so often combine sex and violence. Shocked at this revelation, Goodman is left with a moral quandary. Can he arrest the one he loves? Later, Goodman meets with Olga, perhaps in an attempt to explain, but finds her dead in her cell after committing suicide. On searching through her personal effects, he finds a note, the only physical evidence that could condemn Franny. Alone on the rooftop of the NYPD station, he makes his choice and burns the note. Unsure of his decision, Goodman walks out into the night, his feet leading him to Minsky's exhibit, and, for better or worse, he returns to the one he loves.
That's the end of the movie.
2 of Everything is the hot new single from global superstar Maria, played by Marissa Marcel. She's in the midst of a comeback, preparing to release a new album, but her best kept secret is that she's not the artist she used to be. Heather, played by Marissa Marcel, is Maria's body double, providing the stage performances that the real Maria is no longer up to. Even with the artistic responsibilities handed over to Heather, Maria is exhausted by the constant events and attention that come with being a pop star. Maria convinces Heather to help out with a one-off photo shoot. Leaning into the fact that Heather is adapting to media events like a natural, Maria asks Heather to sing as Maria at a birthday party for a local billionaire. Heather is less than enthused but comes around when Maria promises she'll get the full paycheck for the event, $10 million. Desperate for the money, Heather agrees and the two secretly swap homes, phones, and IDs. If $10 million to sing Happy Birthday sounds too good to be true, that's because it is. Andrew Hessenberg is one of the most powerful men in New York, and he expects that power to extend beyond just business. Leading Heather back to his room, he sexually assaults her. Heather manages to escape before the situation becomes much worse and finds Arthur's wife, Isabella, played by Amy Archer. Heather explains what happened, hoping to confide in her, but it turns out Isabella is on Arthur's side. She knows of her husband's exploits, but admits a man with Hessenberg's power can do whatever he likes. Husband and wife are as cold-hearted as each other, but Heather knows she has power too. The world knows of Maria, and there would be a media frenzy if news of the night's events got out. Isabella agrees, and therein lies the problem. Aware of the truth's ramifications and seeing that Heather will not sweep this under the rug, she has no choice but to kill her.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
The next morning, the real Maria wakes and sees her death all over the news. The young star tragically drowned after going for a swim while high on pills. But Maria knows Heather couldn't swim. Why would she have gotten herself into such a position? Equal parts shell-shocked and suspicious, Maria returns to New York under a new identity, Heather. Certain that Isabella and Andrew Hessenberg are behind Heather's death, Maria seduces Andrew at a club and has him take her back to his home. High on pills and power, he shows Maria the scene where he sexually assaulted Heather. She pulls a gun on him and forces him to tell her who killed her body double.
Did you kill her?
Why do you fucking care? No, I didn't kill her. My wife did.
Enraged, she scours the building for Isabella and finds her on the roof. In the same place where Heather was murdered, Maria ensures Isabella suffers the same fate. Maria leaves the pool reborn as the new Heather and lives out the rest of her life as an unassuming acoustic singer-songwriter. Personal preferences aside, I think we can all agree that these are fairly decent movies. You know, a religious romance, a sexy thriller, and a star-studded life swap were all pretty standard genre hits for the time. They weren't going to break any box office records or get featured at film festivals, but I don't think they were bad enough to never make it to cinemas. So where did it all go wrong? To understand that, we must make a small but incredibly impactful change to the archive footage. By switching from scene order to filming order, as in the chronological order of when the scenes were filmed rather than the order they appear in the films, we can better see how they took shape. And by paying attention to the time between the takes, we can unfurl the story of Marissa Marcel. Let's go back to 1968 to Marissa's audition for Ambrosio.
What is your name?
Marissa Marcel.
Ah, yes, from the advertisement. I bought the soap. How old are you, dear?
17 and 10 months.
Ah, perfect age.
I counted 18 seconds before we got our first inappropriate comment, and trust me, it only gets worse.
You may show signs of intelligence, but are not yet old enough to think you know better than your director.
The audition is being led by Arthur Fischer, director of Ambrosio, and quite clearly someone who likes to abuse this position of power. Although Marissa plays the temptress in Ambrosio, her innocence was the reason she was cast. Fischer claims this is to hide the twist from the audience, but it becomes clear he finds some twisted satisfaction of his own in turning Marissa, who is 17 when filming starts, let's not forget, into a sexual deviant. The real problem is he pulls it off. The rotten seeds that Fischer sows will warp Marissa's perspective on her job as an actress for the rest of her career. In early table reads, Fischer is constantly implying Marissa's sexual ignorance.
Would you care to explain what that means, my dear? For the benefit of Marissa here.
She's sucking.
I know what oral sex is.
Sophia shares this belief somewhat. We see in her first audition that she wanted the role of Matilda, so there may be some jealousy rooted in her actions, but her main focus is Robert, as there are numerous instances of them flirting, which ultimately leads them to dating. While Marissa is potentially a little put off by the chemistry between Robert and Sophia, while her and Robert share only an on-screen romance, it's clearly Fischer that's causing her discomfort.
And how does it feel to be sculpted by Fischer?
It's a great honor.
This likely puts several dents in Marissa's ego, and fueled by what she believes is her integrity as an artist, she assumes the role of Matilda. She approaches all scenes involving sex and nudity with confidence.
I understand there are quite heavy love scenes in this picture. Is that something you find uncomfortable?
Enjoy them. I think more people should try it. Take their clothes off on camera.
Stop looking at the camera. Okay. Quick reset here. Let's do it again. Don't get hurt.
That gets the attention of Director of Photography John Durick, but unfortunately, this is not merely a professional appreciation. If Fischer is a pervert, John is a predator. While Marissa is 18 by now, John looks much older than that. Durick flirts with her behind the scenes, and this quickly escalates to encouraging her to look at the camera during sex scenes and undressing on set, to which Marissa starts reciprocating. The two eventually get intimate, with Marissa even suggesting they do so on camera and put it in the final cut.
Make it like I'm fucking the camera.
Over the months of filming, it's clear Marissa has changed. She has certainly assumed the role of the temptress, but it feels more like the role has consumed her.
This has been my first movie. What a first movie. I feel like I just went through 4 years of film school and acting school and just life in a few months.
Marissa, likely a mixture of tolerant and oblivious to how she's been treated, is no doubt still on a high after Ambrosio finished shooting. Not least because she put in an excellent performance, she also seems closer than ever with John. But there is a split there between character and actress. Where one was the embodiment of lust and temptation, Marissa was constantly mocked for being the opposite.
Do you have much need for aphrodisiacs, my dear?
I don't know what an aphrodisiac is, Mr. Fischer. Could you elaborate?
Marvelous.
Is the truest form of art not to blur the lines between actress and character to create a performance that feels real? Marissa and John's relationship brings the two together in Minsky, with John now directing for the first time and the two collaborating on the writing. Marissa's admiration for John seems to grow rapidly. She is often eager to take on John's directorial advice and offer her own.
I'm the photographer.
I like that.
Visibly pleased if he agrees with it. Yet she still flirts with Carl, maybe because she really likes him, maybe because she wants to make John jealous, but most likely, I think, because this is a chance to prove she can be seductive. In Ambrosio, only Matilda had sexual power, as Fischer often pointed out. The real-life seduction was done by Sophia towards Robert. This is Marissa's chance to charm the lead actor.
I'm going to seduce Carl.
Carl seems to like Marissa, but he's uncomfortable with her heavy flirting. No doubt Marissa, at first, thought the same problem she faced in Ambrosio was rearing its head again, but a couple of key scenes tell us the real reason Carl rejected Marissa's advances.
If I was queer, you'd think I was a hero for that.
But you're not queer.
Okay, I'm gonna be happy when Douglas comes back and you can all pick on him for being a dinosaur.
There's plenty of subtext to read into there, and sure enough, in a scene shot well into Minsky's filming schedule, our suspicions are confirmed.
What happened?
I'm really excited about this movie we're making together. John, Marissa.
No.
John has exploited Marissa as long as they've worked together, but he really forgoes any notion of caring for her feelings when he and Carl become some kind of item. In Ambrosio, Marissa's insecurities around her sex appeal led her to John. In Minsky, her attempts to combat this insecurity in seducing Carl not only fail once again, but John, the only man she has been able to seduce, ends up with Carl instead. It's a messy and mentally strenuous situation for both Marissa and Carl, and the scenes after this revelation show visible awkwardness between the two.
Cut. That was a little off. Carl, let Marissa lead things.
John, being the f***ing arsehole that he is, makes it worse, choosing to drive in the knife rather than try and mediate the situation.
Okay, let's go again. From the top to the touch point center.
Not only that, but Minsky's plot starts to mirror Marissa's crumbling relationship, almost mocking her further.
I thought I was seducing you.
In one of the last clips during Minsky's shooting, a behind-the-scenes video made by John, we see Marissa visibly depressed. She seems at a low point, yet John continues to manipulate her. 2 days later, this happens.
It just went off.
Fuck, Jesus fucking Christ.
In her confession, Marissa mentions John almost immediately. For whatever reason, she is completely unaware of his damaging behavior, probably because she's still so young. I mean, she's only 20 years old at this point, something the slimy dregs of media are still infatuated with.
Can we tell the people at home how old you actually are?
Yes, I'm 20.
That is correct. Now, we know you from the movie that you just finished shooting.
And that is all there is from Marissa Marcel for almost 30 years. The next time we see her is at the start of filming for Two of Everything in 1999. John Durick is once again directing, but both of them seem distant. The film as a whole has none of the energy behind the scenes the way Ambrosio or Minsky did. They may have been toxic environments, sure, but everyone looked like they were having fun, at least. Here we see the cast going through the motions. There are lengthy table reads covering 6, 7, 8 scenes at a time, with John giving no direction at all. The pacing for several of the scenes is sloppy, actors don't seem to know when to come in, and many run for multiple takes.
Scene 14-15 Charlie, take 7. Scene 24 Charlie, take 7. Scene 26 Bravo, take 8. Scene 59 Alpha, take 6.
Ambrosio and Minsky rarely saw a take go above 3 or 4. Time seems to have taken its toll on Marissa and John. There's no indication why or how the two started working again this long after Minsky. Although there are flickers of them working in harmony.
She stands.
Why does she kneel?
She's a ghost at her own funeral.
Is she ready to acknowledge his death? Or must she still keep distance?
I decide later. I think now I'm processing. First Heather.
First the child, then she can heal the adult.
So we stand.
The chemistry they once had is long gone. Maybe part of that is the fact that John is now with Amy, who's also working on Two of Everything, but, multiple relationships were never beneath him in the past. John is largely passive throughout shooting, apart from the occasional spat of frustration. Not once is he seen on set giving direction. Marissa has taken on that role, which seems to stem from her determination to be recognized as an actress and not a sex object. As she did in the previous 2 films, she puts on a great performance, but it comes at a price. She is performing 2 lead roles, a number of high-intensity dance numbers, and directing, which is enough of a strain, but self-doubt is causing her to rerun takes.
Thanks. So what did you say?
John is fine with letting scenes drag on and asks even more of her at times, and there are moments where it's clear Marissa is burning out.
Good to move on? We can take a break. We should take a break. No, you're burning the candle at both ends.
Compounding her struggle, once again, Marissa's insecurities are cruelly amplified by the plot.
And the moment you let your guard down, they'll walk all over you. So
It's painful pang after pang, yet Marissa looks more indifferent than upset. Perhaps the years finally got to her, yet she's still unaware of the damage, this time physical as well as mental. She ignores every advice to slow down or take a break, even as the effects get progressively more damaging.
John? Where did John go?
And that is how Marissa Marcel passed away. I'm not sure if it's entirely down to working too hard. I mean, a nosebleed I get, but she has clearly some intense brain injury going on. So maybe there was a substance, abuse thing involved, but that's all the footage we have to go off. So there's only one more clip in chronological order that follows this one, and To be honest, it poses more questions than answers. Yes, up until this point, we have only dealt with the obvious parts of immortality, would you believe it? The person we just saw, if you can call them a person, is called the One. And I must preface this section of the video by saying that from here on out, this is purely speculation, because the clips involving the One are so opaque and obscure and mired in meta-commentary and poetry that concrete answers are basically impossible to find. If this infuriated you while you played it, if you have played it, I understand that, but I have actually come to appreciate it, partly because Charlotte Molin's performance is so good. Like the entire casting in this game is phenomenal, but her in particular, oh my god, man. She has this incredible blend of strange and terrifying mystique, while having these moments of grace and rage and such emotional, sadness, depending on the different situation. But I also like the ambiguity of these scenes because I feel confident and content in my interpretation of this part of the game, but I also accept that I may be completely off base, just completely wrong. And I think you need that if you're going to leave so much on the table narratively. So here's what I've got. The One is the unrelenting pursuit of art, and for the majority of Immortality, is shown through Marissa's eyes. The art really does consume her, perhaps figuratively, but potentially literally, as an early clip explains how the One found Marissa when she was still a girl living in France.
I walked down through the villages. I found her in a field. She was still alive. She was beautiful.
Whether this symbolizes the birth of Marissa's passion to become an actress or something more sinister is hard to tell. Marissa's naivety is quickly preyed upon as she enters the film industry, but at first she fully believes in the purity of art.
I hadn't thought much about movies, but when they told me Fischer wanted to see me, I watched his. It was amazing to me.
The One knows different. It understands the inherent corruption of the machine. It knows those behind the camera, people like John and Arthur, will use this pursuit of art to their own sadistic gain. For every time Marissa is shown to be saving face, the One is acting out her true feelings. Note the different reactions in Marissa's Ambrosio audition.
How old are you?
Similarly, in the costume test, the One symbolizes Arthur's true intent at finding Marissa the right costume. Her performance for the camera a stylized undressing. As the voice in the back of Marissa's head, the One also serves as her coping mechanism for the things she's being asked to do. Art is the best defense, she says.
Good people will always defend the art, and if you live the art, they end up defending you.
Even this early into her career, we see hints that Marissa's legacy as an actress is very important to her, compounded by her growing knowledge that if her acting is so closely tied to her beauty, she will have an ever-shrinking window of opportunity.
You know a rose is beautiful because it only blooms for a short while.
Marissa cannot stall the passage of time, of course, and as she evolves in the industry, the One starts to reflect on the people she works with.
Wasn't as great as I wanted it to be.
You think he elevates you?
Who is it here questioning John's talents? Well, this is the Other, which I think is the gnawing self-doubt that follows anyone with a creative spirit.
In 100 years?
As Marissa's strive for greatness grows, so too does the other's conflicting views, but their main perspective, as it's rooted in Marissa's deepest insecurities, involves her relationship with John.
He has no idea what you are.
Marissa wasn't yet able to identify John as the real reason for her mental stress, so it was Carl that became the embodiment for the other. When we see Marissa and Carl acting awkward between takes after Carl and John get together, the other shows all the feelings she's bottling up.
You want it to look real.
It's a movie.
No!
As Marissa's anguish at the situation amplifies, she concludes that killing the other, i.e. killing Carl, is the only solution.
You chose them.
I chose me.
You never watched me die before. She saw that they cremated me. But I didn't die. An infinity of nothing. And then...
I watched him die on the screen.
And I was reborn.
While filming Minsky, Marissa believed Carl was driving a wedge between her and John, but the other would surface again, this time as Amy during Two of Everything. For me, this is the biggest indication that the other is Marissa's deepest insecurity, that she cannot maintain the attention of men. That man being John, who she's fallen in love with by the time Minsky is filmed. Therefore, the other is the biggest threat to the one, whose pursuit of art, as it pertains to Marissa, is being wanted by men, as this is every role she's assumed in her career to date. Ironically, killing Carl drives John away from Marissa, the final twist of the knife that likely causes her to leave both John and acting behind.
What you did was horrific.
I wanted to be like you.
I thought you wanted to be with me.
It's the same.
Should I be scared of you?
This isn't the reaction that I wanted.
Of course, she does return to John 3 decades later, but the disconnect between them is now even more apparent. To the one, John doesn't even appear next to her during early table reads. Marissa's return to acting inevitably means the other has returned as well. But it doesn't embody Amy this time. In a clear parallel to Carl's death, the one once again has a gun trained on a man. "I had them burn you," she says as the camera pans toward Amy. The other shows up once in Ambrosio, taking the form of the devil. It shows up mostly in Minsky, taking the form of Carl. Based on this scene, it should take the form of Amy. So why doesn't it? What has changed?
The other one was there, but like never before, and we pushed, but I was trying to do too much, to be too much.
Marissa has finally detached from John, I think. Two of Everything is about her and her alone, and Amy helped her realize her true talent as an artist.
Amy has very little of me apart from my brilliance. Through her, I wanted to engage with the pressures that shape our art.
Finally, she has broken free from the shackles of sexual objectification. She has truly grown, perhaps to a point where she accepts the other will always be a part of her, shown most clearly when Maria kills Isabella.
It's different. Amy did it.
Amy's still here.
Yes.
For you cannot have one without the other. That acceptance could form a positive resolution, but Marissa, as we know, does not survive filming 2 of Everything. A shock death when we watch the real-life footage, but the more we interact with the One and her strive for immortality, the more we see that her death may have been preordained.
What had happened to the other one was new. It pointed to a new possibility. Even as I was falling apart, I felt there was a way. How to be free of all flesh and become something more. You can come back from this. Not again. It's okay. Let me die the way you died, and I'll be more.
Let me die as you died and I'll be more. It's fitting, then, that Amy is the one to cremate Marissa Marcel. The final piece of footage in Immortality is a symbolic one, a result of burning the candle at both ends, of flying too close to the sun. The parallels are myriad, but the key one, fire is the killer. An artist that died so many deaths sees this as the ultimate act of defiance, I think. Let me burn as you have burned me. Let only my legacy remain. That's just my interpretation anyway. I could well be wrong, but perhaps that's the other talk. There are a couple of notes, because I'm making this video relatively early after, or relatively soon after the game's release, that don't quite fit my perception of both the one and the other. I don't know why Marissa doesn't age between 1970 and 1999. Quite a few reviews have pointed this out, saying something along the lines of, "We'll leave you to figure this out." But I think that translates to, "We'll leave you to figure this out, because we have no fucking clue." The About section says John Durick dies while filming 2 of Everything, but I cannot find anything to prove this. There is one scene where both he and Marissa collapse after filming.
John?
It feels like that should be it, but John is seen again on camera a couple of weeks later, and I have scrubbed the few scenes that follow this one so clean so many times to try and find anything, and all I got was this remark saying,
"We're okay going without him? I just don't want to be here tomorrow going again. It's just weird, okay?"
Which suggests that John isn't there to film, but that's it. And finally, and this is the big one, I don't know who these people are. Literally got no clue. No idea. I found no reference to them. I've seen a couple of theories that the one has like vampiric qualities, which I get because there are a couple of clips where they're drinking blood, and the idea is that I read is that there are previous hosts that the one inhabiting, and the most recent one being Marissa, but I just can't make the logic jump to vampires. Like, the one's clips are also poignant and so artsy and mysterious that I struggle for it also to be like, oh, and she's a vampire, by the way. I think the blood-sucking is more to do with consumption, as Marissa learns the industry is willing to consume her for its own benefit. But, you know, I'll admit that leaves these scenes adding nothing to my interpretation, which probably does mean I'm missing something. And that's okay. You know, if I do find something new when I inevitably look over all of Immortality's footage again, and I find something new, or I think of something new and that changes my interpretation, I will make some kind of follow-up video, probably. So that's that. Okay, now, that was a lot, wasn't it? But hopefully it's made Immortality's story a little bit clearer for you. That was the aim. This game's narrative is intentionally murky and vague, and while I like that, I accept that other people may have a problem with it. But opinions aside, I think that a big talking point here is Immortality a game? While the current trend is for AAA studios to use the latest digital technology to bring cinema to games, I think Immortality deserves credit for turning that trend on its head. This is not trying to replicate cinema, it is cinema, while at the same time telling key parts of the story outside of what we'd see if this was an actual film. Take away the rehearsals, the table reads, and the remarks once the clapperboard comes down, and Marissa Marcel's story would be nothing more than a promising actress who couldn't recover from accidentally killing a co-worker. Of course, that's not the point of Immortality. This is a puzzle game in the vein of creator Sam Barlow's previous games, Her Story and Tell Me Lies. But in both those games, and even more so in Immortality, it's a puzzle game that doesn't care if it's solved. From my understanding, the end credits roll once you've seen a certain portion of clips, like 60 to 70%. I haven't been able to test that, but it certainly ends before you can get a real grip on the mystery surrounding Marissa Marcel. The only way to really understand is to unlock every clip and view them in scene order to understand the plot of the films, and then in chronological order to see the events that transformed our leading lady. I question why the credits roll when they do. It's about 8-9 hours in total, but I just don't understand why they would end it there when so much is left unsaid. That approach might be suited to art house cinema, which Immortality is clearly trying to mimic, and does so pretty well, I will say, but does it work for a game? We are not audience members passively watching a cinema screen. We are dictating, however slightly, the pace of the action. Direct input is required from us, and when there's no payoff at the end of that, it feels like a bit of a letdown. If I'd have stopped playing Immortality when the credits rolled, I'd have no idea what I just watched. And that's not the same way you might be confused at the end of a film like Mulholland Drive, which, again, Immortality takes massive inspiration from, and just David Lynch films in general, but in the sense that I've just spent 8 hours flitting between a bunch of clips with no context that spans 3 decades. Like, even the About section is hidden in the menus that gives you the premise of the game. Like, I missed that until about 4 hours in. I suppose that is the case for this unprecedented bridge between cinema and game narrative. It's not supposed to feel normal, potentially, and that certainly makes it memorable if you are committed to unraveling the mystery and willing to come to your own conclusion. My issue is not with the gameplay itself, which some people will no doubt claim as non-existent, but the focus on why we're here. I just don't think it's quite enough to leave people to their own devices. You can do that in a film. Drop people into a scenario and have them watch like a fly on the wall, but when we are responsible for seeing where that scenario goes, more direction is needed, which is ironic, because the direction in the films themselves and the attention to detail that has gone into the films is so good, and the performances are so good, like on par with Hollywood level stuff. Like, I had to constantly remind myself that these are actors playing actors. Just like, can't get over how good the casting was and the performances are for this game. So what is Immortality? A game? A film? An interactive story? It seems like all of them and none of them at the same time. Mostly it tells the tragic decline of an actress who got chewed up and spit out by the great rattling chain of Hollywood. This was told over 3 films rather than 1, and those films are not made traditionally. They might need to be watched linearly in order to piece together the story, but Immortality's core game mechanic of flitting through time and cinematic genre leaves the player reeling in those early moments. It is then up to you how far you descend into the rabbit hole, and anything that uses a mechanic, however slight, can be considered a game in my eyes. Immortality's narrative transcends the movie theatre. Other games have done that, but Immortality also transcends your sofa or gaming chair with controller in hand. It seeps into the realms of online forums and explainer videos like this one. It is not enough to play from start to finish. We must dig deeper. We must debate and discuss, fuel the fires of intrigue. For every scene, every take has been bathed in motif, blackened with foreshadowing that spans decades. In a world where every answer to every question can be accessed in a few moments online, there is something exciting about a curiosity that has no end. As we each delve deeper into Immortality, we become lost in our own interpretation, and as perceptions clash, new life is breathed into the art, a rhythmic rise and fall of immortal life. This art tells the rise and fall of Marissa Marcel.
What you fear the most is death and pain. We wanted to create the purest image of that.
What is your name?
Marissa Marcel.
My copy of the script says they kiss passionately.
I think you're going to be a huge deal, Miss Marcel.
Sweet innocence. Now look at Matilda. Pure carnality. I live to serve you.
Live to serve you. Was that good, John? Would you sell your soul if I asked you? Are you ready for a satanic fuck? That's what it says in the script, Arthur.
Marissa, you good? John, can I have my lead actress for the shot she's in?
Roll on this a while, and then you, finish with a big orgasm.
Making a movie is about capturing the light that bounces off your skin and recording it on film and then releasing it to the audience in the theaters. When you're sat in the theater, the light that hits your eye, it's part of this chemical chain that reaches back to and touches my skin. I think in that way, if we make movies that show more of the body, it could be a powerful magic.
That is amazing. You are smarter than you look.
I made some movies. With each one, I try to make it perfect.
I want to set up the ideas and characters and then shoot them like a documentary. I want to capture something alive.
I'm going to seduce concrete.
You're okay with this, John? Why me? Am I the boss, Marissa?
You are.
I want Marissa to touch you.
This is all good. I mean, let me think about it, okay?
No, I like seeing good men alone.
I'm really excited about this movie we're making together. John, Marissa.
No. I thought I was seducing you.
You want it to look real.
It's a movie.
It's fake.
No!
Do you know any artists that aren't disgusting? Think he elevates you?
Movies are art. He's an artist.
He's a child playing.
John liked the mystery. He didn't like there being an answer. And that the answer was that I was bigger than him he didn't like.
Do you sleep with all your actresses?
As a rule, yes. An artist should be familiar with his material.
Well, then you should fuck Carl, too. Otherwise, you're as bad as Minsky.
We all know what happens to Minsky.
There's a life cycle to an artist. It's very important to get the timing right.
Speak nicely, your eyes are treating her like me.
Everyone is trying to take advantage of you. Everyone.
We should do this for real sometime. Marissa, not Maria.
You taught me to never point a gun at someone unless you're prepared to use it.
I guess that's the challenge with the filmmaking. How to make her a murderer and sympathetic.
The great miracle of this world is that women do so little murdering.
You should put that in the movie.
You don't get to fix my line reads this time.
Let's go again. We can pick it out. I wanted to the master.
It's late. You need to sleep.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Let's go.
You don't think for a second that you don't deserve this. I'm sure she thought of herself as some kind of artist, but when you get that famous, you're basically a whore.
No.
You can't give me what I want.
I felt the pain in my heart. I felt the grief at who I'd been back then.
People have all wondered what it is to mourn yourself.
Go beyond death and look back at existence as a stage. Keep rolling. I want to go straight into another one.
Would you like to meet me? Fire is the killer. You don't come back from complete cremation, darling.
To movies.
To movies.